Hi, everybody. Thomas Goss, your orchestration tutor here. And I'd like to welcome you all to a very special event, which is going to be recorded live and then broadcast or uploaded to YouTube so you can watch it again. So if there's something that you need to go back, you don't need to ask a question. Say, could you clarify that again so that I don't miss it? Don't worry about it. It's all going to be recorded. This event started because two long-term and very awesome members of the Orchestration Online community had a conversation, and it was a thread that was asking advice, and by the suggestion of one of them, this was turned into an event where a professional percussionist could give advice to a composer with a work in progress. And I thought that that was just such a great idea because the topic that we'll be discussing is something that sounds kind of boring, like the actual terms, the terminology, player assignment and changes, right? Or changing. And you might think that who cares, but actually it's a very, very important concern. And it's not so much that the composer has to think about, like, has to put themselves in the place of a percussion section leader and decide which player is going to play what and who's going to do what at what time and who's going to change to which instrument and everything. And I've got all of this worked out, and they must obey what I have decided. It is more that you as a percussionist, or excuse me, you as a composer for percussionists have got to accommodate the needs of the professional percussionist, to give them time to make reasonable changes, to give them the agency to decide for themselves which part they should go to, and to give them enough space in the score to where they have time to move around the stage, they have time to change between instruments, they have there is a rational distribution of parts and roles and all those other kinds of things, which is really one of the biggest questions that we get in the community. We get people sharing parts of their score and asking, is there enough time to make this change? Am I asking for too many players? How many players would I need in order to achieve this particular effect with these percussionists? So that is all going to be addressed, or hopefully mostly addressed, in this as we go through the score of the person who asked the question. Okay, and that is my friend and colleague, Daniel. Okay, and we are going to add him into the group here. There's Daniel's in the center here in my screen view. And over there on the edge is Jamie. Jamie, we're going to bring you in just a couple of minutes. All right. So Daniel, why don't you go ahead and talk about your score in progress? What is the project that you're working on? What are your aims? What was your particular need with your your percussion section and everything else?
Great, sure thing. Well, first, just to say thank you so much to Thomas for hosting this event, and to Jamie for sharing his expertise. I'm really looking forward to getting some insights from both of you and from the rest of the community as well. So yeah, I'm Danyal Dhondy. I'm a composer and arranger living in Paris. And I've been writing this piece. It's a bit of a passion project, really. I've been writing it sort of off my own back for the last couple of years, on and off, actually. And it's a piece that's based on a children's book called Diapason, or The Conductor in English. It's a French book. It's a wordless, illustrated picture book for children. And when I saw this book, I just thought, wow, this has got such a great sense of, suggests such a great musical accompaniment that could be written. I wonder if someone's done it, and lo and behold, nobody had. So I contacted the author, and she said, go ahead and have a go if you like. So I've been working away writing this piece, and I've shown it to her, I've shown it to other publishers, and they're kind of keen to progress and to do something with it. So now I'm sort of at the stage where I've pretty much finished the score, but maybe with a few finishing touches to come. And then I'm going to try and submit it to some orchestras and pitch it as a performance opportunity, maybe for a family concert, maybe with a multimedia aspect, with something to link to the visuals of this book. I'll get it later and show it because it's a really incredible thing. But anyway, one of my questions as I'm at this stage is about getting the score just really ready to send off to orchestras and to have people like conductors and librarians look at it and think, is this a practical thing that we could do? Is this feasible? So I guess it's at that stage where I'm trying to think of all my sort of maximalist instincts of all the instruments I want to use, etc., on the one hand, and then compared with the practicalities of what's going to make this piece really kind of sellable and make the orchestra really feel like it's going to be easy to do. So part of that, I think, is with the percussion section, quite a big part. It's often one of the kind of biggest question marks or grey areas in how long is a piece of string. So just getting it into shape and being able to say, well, this is a piece for ideally 4 players or possibly 5, or let's see. But being able to say really concretely, yes, you can do it with this many players. It's all the changes have been worked out. And, you know, as Thomas said, of course, different orchestras might have a different approach and change things around. But just so I can, at this stage, say at least I know I've been assured by top professionals that this is doable as it stands. So that's kind of my aim.
Now, speaking of which, let's bring in a really great pro percussionist. And I think, Jamie, you've also done some educating, and you are also a conductor and a composer as well. And I do want to say that I am so appreciative of your role in the community of just giving people advice and just, you know, a lot of times stopping fights before they start about different little minutia. You know, that's one of those things in the community is minutia can kill a friendship. And so I'm always trying to like head that off. It's just like, look, guys, it's, you know, it's like, it's not worth, you know, it's, you know, it doesn't matter what the pronunciation is. It's just, let's move on now to, but yeah, but you've managed to step in a lot and give us some really great advice. And I was really impressed by, you know, before you even made the suggestion to turn this into a kind of a seminar or a talk, at the advice that you were giving Daniel, and just, you know, this the how much, you know, professionalism and insight that you had on how his score would or wouldn't work, right? Or what would not so much that it wouldn't work, but more that, you know, what would make it workable, right? That's the thing, is like a lot of times things will work, but the composer may not be aware of things that would make it work better, right? And so I think that that's mainly what we're going to look at. So Jamie, you know, I'm gonna let you more or less take over, but I may jump in here and there to ask about clarification or to see if, you know, has been a question in the feed that you could answer. And this is probably going to go for about 90 minutes or so, and then after that, maybe we'll have 20-30 minutes of Q&A, if that's cool with everybody. And if we go long, we go long. All right. So anyhow, I will just say, with that, I will say, take it away, Jamie.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the introduction. And just to share a little bit about myself, as Thomas said, I'm a composer and a conductor, and I teach at a couple universities. And I also am the principal timpanist with the Oklahoma City Philharmonic. And I'm a trained percussionist, which means I play all the instruments. And I didn't necessarily train specifically for timpani. And the way that I thought about timpani parts before getting the job is totally different than I think about it now. So there is something to percussion that, even when you've studied it and been around it a ton, that just immersing in one area of it will illuminate even more of it. So for anyone watching who's not a percussionist, just just know that it's a crazy world, and it's not your fault if you're ever confused about percussion, because half these instruments we just make it up. We're like, yeah, we're gonna hit some flower pots. So I'd like to start with looking at Carmina Burana. And so I mentioned I play with the Oklahoma City Philharmonic, and our principal percussionist is Patrick Womack. And what he does for every concert, usually I don't get to see these because I'm my own section in the timpani. So I asked him to send me some. He'll have a stage plot and blocking, but he'll also have just the minutia of exactly who plays what when. And Carmina Burana is a great one because there's no, like, this is for 3 players, and that's and it works for that. It's just kind of chaos in the score, and you have to, as the principal percussionist, go through and figure out how does this work. And so over here on the left, you can see this is for timpani plus 5. So there's 5 percussionists, and then there's the timpanist as well involved. And so you can kind of see that Patrick has given himself most of the crash cymbal parts. Roger played most of the snare drum parts. Steph played most of the Glock and xylophone stuff. Keith played most of the bass drum. And then Tommy played a lot of tambourine and also just kind of a lot of random things. And that ties in a lot to the approach that we're going to take with Daniel's score today, where we're going to.
And can I just say, I'm very glad to see that Patrick also gave himself the castanets, because that's really the best bit of the whole score, isn't it? In Carmina Burana.
Yeah, and he also gets to play a second timpani, so he gets to move around and he gets to choose what he wants to do, right? He's like, that sounds fun, I'll do it. But yeah, so like we'll take that approach generally with sort of giving someone their area where it's like, this is a very active part, that person's responsible for that part, instead of going moment to moment and saying, okay, now you play this, which I think is what often gets us stuck in corners, and now all of a sudden I feel like I need 7 percussionists because I did that, and it makes it harder for the players. So just poking through this, you can kind of see number 14 is the one that I picked up and I pulled because it has multiple people playing multiple instruments. So you have your timpani, and then you've got, looks like snare drum and bass drum here. So you've got these 2 players 3 and 4 are going, and they keep doing that. Then we add in triangle and tambourine. So if you think about snare drum player having to move quickly to either of those, might be kind of risky to do that. Bass drum player having to move to either of those might be kind of risky, and the snare drummer still is playing anyway. So you, at this point, you kind of know that you need timpani plus 1, 2, 3, 4 at least. So find like the pain points or the moment where the most ink is, and say, okay, how are we going to make that work? And then build out from there. Also, number 24, there's everybody's playing here, and there's a little instruction here for player 5 to leave out the last 2 measures of the Glock part. So let's look at that too, and just kind of see what's actually happening there. So there's 3 people on glockenspiel, which is crazy. Carl, what are you doing, man? And 2 people on timpani. So he's really stratifying the range of the orchestra there. And so we have timpani plus the second timpanist. We have Glock 1, 2, and 3. And then we have someone lying in wait. We have bass drum there. And then we're going to have some crash cymbals near the end here. Yep. And that's going to be our first Glock player, who's going to go from right here, this Glock part, to those crash cymbals. So she's got to move pretty quickly right there. Thankfully, there's a fermata, so that makes that change help a little bit. And then Glock 3 says leave out the last 2 measures and then go to tambourine. So I guess that's basically saying right here, these last 2 measures, Tommy's going to move to tambourine and play that and not go back to glockenspiel. And you don't really need 3 players doing this. Since this part is tripled, it's okay if 1 player isn't doing that. So this is somewhere that's not strictly exactly what the composer wrote in the score, but the percussion section made it work. It would be kind of crazy to hire someone to play those 2 roles. No one's going to do that. Cool. So that's just a little bit of an overview of kind of reverse engineering in a way, and saying here's a score that's already done, and here's what a percussion section did to make that work. So now I think.
Can I ask a quick question? So do you actually, like, I'm seeing your layout of the players on each part. Is that something that you print out and share with your section?
Yeah. So Exactly.
So they get a copy of that and say, okay, well, I'll do cymbals here and I'll do Glock there and so on.
Yeah. So the principal player is going to say, this is who's going to be where when, and then he also has here what instruments you are going to be playing throughout the whole program. And usually in an email it'll be communicated like you need to bring these couple things. Percussionists will usually bring triangles, tambourines, maybe a couple cymbals that they really like, other little toys. Usually not expecting to transport large drums or large keyboard instruments.
Right. Have you one tiny little thing? Have you seen the little Glock shaker that they use in the WDR performance? They've got somebody purpose built a shaker that has got metal bars and beaters in it that have all of the pitches of that tremolo, and they just shake it like this.
That's awesome.
And that frees up like everybody else in the percussion section.
Right.
So yeah, anyway.
No, I hadn't. That's fun. And as a composer, I'm like, ooh, what could we do with that?
Yeah, right, exactly. But you could, you'd have to, I don't know if you could change the bars around in the instrument though. It might just have one particular use.
What's it called, this instrument?
I don't know. I would just think of it as a Glock shaker.
Glock shaker. The Carmina phone? I don't know.
Yes, maybe somebody in the comments will know. Carmina phone. I love it.
Cool. So right here, we've got our piece of the day here, and what we've got at the bottom here. So there's a timpani part, which is here, and it's its own thing. And then right here where it says triangle, what we have is these are the actual sonic demands of the piece. So this is what's happening when, and it's not distributed for players necessarily. And then up here, I've got 4 blank percussion staves for the ideal 4 players only. And then I've got an extra one for if we're going to need a 5th player, or perhaps there are some things that the composer might say, if you have 5, play this. If you don't, you can cut this part or something like that. It's also just a way for me to track what else hasn't been distributed yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scan through here. So I'm going to pretend like I wrote this. I'm like, okay, now I've got to put it in the percussion section. So what am I going to do here? And I'm going to look at the activity of parts, and I'm actually maybe going to move some things. Let's see, cymbals and triangle, or cymbals and bass drum. Okay, get those closer together. Things that are easier to double or bring extras in. Let's see, that'll be good. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. And then let's see. So here's a type change right here. There are some things that might be able to double up, but glockenspiel and marimba are going to use totally different implements. So, okay, some rolls, rolly rolls. Okay, cool. Awesome. First question I have here is, are these rolled, sustained?
No.
No. Okay, cool. For marimba, you could probably, and what is this? Just a Dorico import thing?
Actually, no. That is so. I've put a note earlier on the xylophone part saying cut the xylophone and just put it on the marimba if needed. And I think actually that might be totally necessary, and the xylophone might end up being cut. Let's see.
Yeah. And let's see. So we're at 50 beats per minute still here.
Yes.
Cool. Okay, great. I see now. Okay, and yeah. Okay. So, yeah. Okay. This isn't too fast. Okay, cool. So this is good. What I'm going to start with is this. I'm going to try to get and there's I don't think there's any on the low part of the marimba. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to get rid of, I won't get rid of it, but so it's not actually mine. I'm just going to I'm going to copy the marimba part here onto a staff. So I'm now going to go here, and I'm going to put for myself just to have it. So I have my instrument call out there, and I'm good. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to now hide all of that material, because I we'll look and see. Let's see. Is it not? Okay. It's not actually hiding the way it normally does, but that's fine. So now I can say that those, I don't have to worry about those. Those things are taken care of. So let's see if we can get all of the xylophone and all of the marimba onto one staff here. So now I've focused on the marimba, the percussion 4 part, and the xylophone part to see if we can do something with it. And I think we can. Okay, cool. So just gonna go ahead and take that for myself. Okay, and one thing about xylophone and glockenspiel and all of those transposing folks is you want to write it in generally in the staff. You don't want to write it where it sounds ever, because we're not going to read those ledger lines, and we're just going to play it where we think it sounds best. Then, okay, cool.
Right.
So now what we're going to do is work. Okay.
Oh, yeah, you don't need those ties at all. That's
Yeah, I'll keep that there. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. And I don't want to have to retype marimba, so I'm just going to go back to the beginning and copy it. Now this looks terrible right now, but I would make it look better. But at least for now, it's clear. That's fine for now. Okay, so your player could have one xylophone mallet in the right hand, and then the 3 marimba mallets in like the left hand and the right hand, and play, and then boop. It's also slow enough that you could even, I guess, a player could have like 1 marimba mallet here and 2 here, play, put 1 down, pick up my mallet, play the xylophone. Right here, let's see how fast this is.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, 1, 2, 3, boom. Plenty of time. Boom. 2, 1, 2, 3, play. That'll work. Cool. So now we've gotten our xylophone and our marimba taken care of, which is great. And we're going to go here and look at our setup. So as you are blocking out your piece and seeing, is this going to work, whatever, you want to have a stage plot. You might doodle this on paper. I like to use Google Drawings because it's I can just easily copy and paste, and I can have like a master file that has all these instruments and then just copy them over from that. And so the way I've set this up is, okay, we have timpani, and the specific stage setup we might do differently. We'll see. But we have timpani, all right. We've got our battery instruments, our smaller instruments, and our keyboards. And then I've also duplicated some of the smaller instruments that, if we need to have a second triangle, that's okay. To make something work, like that's not a big deal. We don't want to have a second bass drum unless absolutely necessary. And so let's see if I know how to rotate this thing here. Where was it? They always, there we go. Cool. So now our xylophone and our marimba need to be together, and they need to be at a spot where the player can play both of them. I'm going to have them play it like in an L shape for now, just to keep it together. Okay, cool. So we know that these instruments need to be together. We know that that's just its own thing. Let's continue on our merry way. So where do we have the most ink? Well, right here, there's a fair amount of things in rapid succession. So let's see, starting from here, we've got a triangle, we've got a vibroslap, we've got snare drum, we've got bass drum, we've got a tam-tam, and then someone's going to go to glockenspiel, but there's enough time here. So it's 120 beats per minute. Yeah, so there's 8 seconds or so, or no, 12 seconds or so. Okay, cool. So things that definitely we're not going to put together are the snare drum and the vibroslap. So this is 2 players here.
Okay.
To spin it simple, Oh, go ahead. Oh, is a suspended cymbal with mallets or with sticks?
Actually, that's a question I don't have a good answer to.
Do you want it to sound sharp, or do you want it to sound more of a wash?
It's probably sticks at this point, I'd say, actually. It's quite kind of loud and bombastic, this section. So
perfect. So that's great. So what I'm going to try to do then is, at least right here, I'm going to copy all my snare drum music over, and I'm going to put it in percussion 1, and I'm going to put it on that second space from the top. Okay, cool. I'm going to move the snare drum down. It's out of the way. One by one, the dominoes are falling. And so now I'm going to put the cymbal there as well, because, and then I'm going to put it up here because, yeah. And then where's our other one? There it is. Cool. Great. Okay, I don't know if this player is always going to play the suspended cymbal, if they're always going to do it with sticks, but for now at least, we're good. Let's go ahead and go through our snare drum and our cymbal part and see where else we have some suspended cymbals. Snare drum. Okay. Perfect. So what we're kind of seeing here is that for the most part in this piece, snare drum and the suspended cymbal are not happening at the same time.
Right.
Cool. Now we probably are going to want mallets here. These seem like they're going to be washier, right?
Yeah, I think from probably letter, I don't know, A or B onwards, it's mallets.
And I actually prefer to see anything that's like a big change. So move your station, or go to a new instrument, or change the implements in your hand. I like to see that in a box, because then I can see peripherally this is coming up. Oh, it's right, that's that mallet change or whatever. There's so much text that it just happens kind of along the way that it's easy for that to be lost. And that's something that's really an important one, because if I'm playing with mallets and it needs to be with sticks, it's going to be a very different sound. You want these to be struck? Do you want there to be space in between?
No, that's just kind of the arrival of the swell, I guess.
Okay, cool. So you might go ahead and just tie these. So it's wah.
Okay.
And if you wanted it to have an attack, you could put an accent. We'd go wah. And if you had no tie and no accent, you might have something like roll ah. Now suspended cymbals do, and this isn't necessarily for you. I'm not saying like this, the suspended cymbal. For anyone watching, maybe doesn't know the intricacies and the ins and outs of the suspended cymbal. It's a washy sound anyway, so it will have some continuing to swell even after you're done playing it. So this isn't bad or wrong necessarily, but it just makes it a little bit clearer to know that these are not separated and that it's just a continuation and arrival.
That's great to know. Yeah, absolutely. Let's tie them, and probably accents as well. Actually, I think I do want a bit of rhythmic impulse. Yeah.
Cool. I'll let you do that later.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So just continuing through here, and let's go ahead and do this last bit for the suspended cymbal. So this is at 120 beats per minute still?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So jump, 2, 3, 1, 2, cymbal scrape. You can do that, no problem. What I'm going to do is there's this sort of note head that's got the slash through it. I think that works pretty well. So I usually say with triangle beater, just to kind of clarify that that's the sound that I'm looking for.
Quick question there, Jamie.
Please.
How readable do you find the slash through the note head? Because I've heard some percussionists find like they might not even notice it because it's
the worst.
Okay, all right. So just so be advised. What I've heard, and you can correct me on this, Jamie, is that it's better to use a different shaped note head than to use a slash through it if you have a particular thing, and to really carefully associate that technique with the note head as often as you feel it needs it.
Yes. I would say, like in drum set writing, this drives me up the wall because it's so hard to see that slash, especially if I'm playing from back here, like I'm 5 feet away, or maybe not 5 feet away, but like maybe 3 feet away from my station, and there's this little slash. You're not going to see it. But in this specific instance, I went to slash for maybe the right reason, maybe the wrong reason, but that symbol is an X, and we'll talk about note heads here in a bit because people have opinions on those, and I have opinions on those, and no one's wrong. But because that's been an X this entire time, then you see it with, you could even just do a regular note head, but I like the slash because it sort of does reinforce it. But either way, even if you don't see the slash, it's a different note head here from what it was before. But some other things that you could choose for that probably, let's see. So we want something that's not annoying. This is even the backslash is easier to see than the front slash is.
Yeah, that looks clearer, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm gonna add my vote to that. I think the backslash is much better.
Yeah,
It would be nice if the line were thicker. I also feel.
Yep, that would solve so many problems. Okay, cool. So then we're back to, ooh. Now these are with mallets, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a spot where our snare drum and our cymbals need to be independent.
Split up, yeah. And that's a pretty big snare solo. I think that's probably wise to keep that separate for that section.
Right, okay, cool. So now we basically said, let's see, let's go back to where the scrape happened. Right here. Okay, so now we've got the suspended cymbal part done, except for the ending there. So we'll cover that when we get there. And we've got player 4 here. They come in here with marimba, so we could probably give them one of these things, and that would be fine. How much bass drum do we have in this piece? We have some.
I think one comment I got, I can't remember if it was from you or another advice I got on the thing, was to keep bass drum and tam-tam together if at all possible, and actually that seems to fit quite well. So maybe that's, I think it's distributed so they're not really playing at the same time. So maybe that's worth thinking about.
Yeah, you can. I think most of it, there might be one or two spots that doesn't work for, but what we're going to do right now, then we're just going to copy the cymbals and the bass drum now. So those are taken care of. So this is our concert bass drum. Put it down there. And also probably should put here snare drum. And normally I would not say snares on at the beginning because that's what we assume. We assume you use a snare drum, but because there are moments in here where the snares go off, we're going to want to clarify. I mean, we don't have to, but it's a safety kind of thing. A player could be like, you know.
Can I jump in and just point out to some of our developing orchestrators out there, especially if you've got a repeat in your work and you've got changes on and off, it's really, really great. Because if you go down to the repeat, the snare might still be off the snare, right? Mm-hmm. Or you might want it to be on or off or whatever. So so what Jamie's saying is absolutely valid, but especially with a repeat.
Yeah, and that's one of the things when we talk about note heads that will also be. Oh no, sorry, Tam needs to go up. That we'll also talk about a little bit is sometimes in a rehearsal, the conductor's like, let's start at measure 253, and then you have to quickly find the part in the music and then figure out where should I be standing, what instruments do I need, and sometimes seeing an X note head, you're like, okay, that's a cymbal part, right? Mm-hmm. And you go to the cymbals and you save yourself 1 second, which could be the difference between playing or not playing, and the conductor's like, I need cymbals there or whatever, and you're like, I'm sorry, I didn't know what my instrument was because all the note heads look the same and I had to find the music. So that's one thing. It can also be like alphabet soup in a way with the different note heads. So there's a level of extremity. You got to kind of stay in the zone of safety. Sorry, I didn't know how I was going to end that sentence. I found it. Okay, so our bass drum and our crash cymbals, let me just go ahead and figure out. I'm going to put these up here for now. Yeah, okay, cool. So we have our crash cymbals there. Oops.
So is your philosophy to sort of give every instrument its own little line or space on the 5-line staff, even if they're being played by different players?
Yes. So
pretty good. I like
that. General sort of rules for notation for percussion that I like to share are these big 4 here. So number 1 is keep everything consistent. If you're changing stuff in between like I've played, I don't know if anyone wants to look up, I don't have the score on me, Music for a Farce. It's a fun piece to play, but there's a 5-line staff and they write things on either the bottom, the middle, or the top line, which means you're playing snare drum on the center line, and then it's like triangle, okay, on the top line, and then woodblock on the bottom line, and then it might be snare drum in the middle, and then like woodblock on the top line, and then triangle on the bottom line, and then cymbal in the middle, and then snare drum on the top, and it like from page to page, nothing looks the same. So that's obviously like no one's really doing that anymore, I don't think. You know, I think a lot of us have more of a sense, even without ever worked with percussion before, that that's not necessarily going to work. But yeah, keeping everything consistent, super helpful, because at a glance, we got it. I also sort of broke my rule, but only specify when necessary. So when you give a snare drum, you don't have to say snares on, unless you're playing with the snares on and off a lot, in which case you might need to do that. Same thing like with suspended cymbal. I don't know if you want me to play it with sticks or mallets. It's good to specify. We would assume mallets, but maybe that's not what you want. But you don't have to say like snare drum with snare drum sticks. Like we're gonna be fine. And actually, even with keyboard parts, the mallets, unless you need a specific timbre, you don't need to specify it, because every instrument, every hall, every piece, it's gonna need its own things, and we all have different mallets. So we're gonna pick the mallet that sounds best for the character of the music as best as we understand it, unless you give us something that you specifically need to be like you need brass mallets or something.
Yeah, and just to jump in here, once again, for developing orchestrators, specifying mallets is pretty helpful to the percussionist. And like, you know, if you want a specific sound, of course they might talk you out of it. They might say, I don't want to use, you know, a brass hammer mallets on my beautiful 16-inch dish here, you know, forget it. But, you know, but like they're, you know, I don't want to drop ball bearings on my xylophone. But it really does help. Like if you give them an idea of, you know, where the, like, especially just something as basic as difference between sticks and a soft mallet on a cymbal roll, you know, like a lot of people just assume that they're going to get that beautiful smooth whoosh. And then the you know, they haven't marked it in the score, and, you know, they have to tell the percussionist during the rehearsal, if they even get a chance to, right? If they want, you know, that smoother sound. All right, I'll get out of here.
Yeah, and so just some examples of consistency right here. This is not as good because we have multiple things on the same spot, and so it makes it harder to tell at a glance, what am I playing? It all looks kind of the same. This is better. The toms are on spaces, the snares on a line, so I can visually see these are all tom-toms. That's my snare drum, and the guiro has a different note head and it's on a line. So that's something that's a little bit easier at a glance to see. Over here, even this is not as good, partly because, you know, the tom-toms have square note head, which is okay. It's not a big deal, but the snare drum's also on a space with that. And at a glance, square note head and round note head, they kind of look similar, and it can be easy to mess up and play the wrong thing, especially if you're intermingling the snare drum and the tom-tom part. So just kind of giving everything its own space and letting it just stay there. We have to learn the instrument that is our whole setup for each piece, and so the more consistent that can be, then the better. Same thing like sticking, you don't need to specify. You're not. I'm just sort of just a overview, of course, right? This isn't necessarily for you, Daniel. Just sort of a general.
This is all really great stuff. Can you just tell me what book is this that you're showing here?
This is a not released book. It is a draft. I think this one is just from August, so this one's actually even a fair bit out of date. It's just an forthcoming book on percussion notation.
Wow. Okay, because it looks absolutely fantastic. I was going to say I need to get myself a copy. But
thank you. I'll send it your way.
It's your book.
Yeah.
Oh my. Wow. Okay.
Wow.
I thought you were going to say this was some Elaine Gould or something. Okay, well, fantastic. This looks absolutely wonderful. Sure,
this is part of I can't really talk about it too much, but the Percussive Art Society has some things cooking up to sort of help orchestrators and composers with writing for percussion. And I think that's all I can really say today. Without getting the red sniper dot on me. But yeah, so 5-line staff, default to that. We're all used to reading music on a 5-line staff. So when we have different number of on a staff, it just takes a little bit of 5% extra processing power for us to read. And that's one of the reasons I really think it's most helpful to actually write out these parts for this player, line staff. Here's how your instruments are distributed, and it's just all kind of nice and neat. Even this one right here, it's a 4-line staff, and you only have 4 tom-toms to play, so maybe this is fine, but at a glance, you're
Yeah, it just looks
like,
strange.
wait, okay, is this the second one or the third one? It can be really rare to creep in.
Yeah.
I will say, there's a time when I've specifically asked a composer to use a 1-line staff, and it was Phil Broder. He wrote this. It's a really, really fantastic piece, Flea Pursue, for marimba, and then also there's triangle, suspended cymbal, and bass drum. And he originally, I think, had it on a 5-line staff, and that's just a lot of ink for. It's not in the piece all the time. Most of the time, it's not. So when I see that one extra staff there, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. There's some percussion things happening there, and because it's a limited set of instruments. If it's a 1-line staff, and it's fine.
Yeah, I
It's
can
just
definitely see the logic there. You don't want to sort of mistake it with a third marimba staff, do you? So I think
right, and there's that too. Like when you have three staves that. Okay, cool. Can you still see me and hear me? Let's go back to your part then. your piece.
Yeah, I've got I'm slightly breaking up on me. I don't know if it's my connection or yours. Hope it's not
better.
Yeah, I think it's Jamie's connection.
Huh.
Let me turn my Wi-Fi off. Here, it's off. Is this Thomas? Or am I breaking up too?
Your voice is breaking up a little. Your image is frozen.
How's that?
Better.
Better.
Definitely.
Better. Okay, cool.
The main thing I'm worried about is whether your screen will come through on your from your computer.
Are you able to see it right now?
Yeah, it's great.
Perfect. Okay.
Hopefully, problems.
Well, let's continue before the technology gremlins get us. Okay, cool. So things that aren't going to work, this glockenspiel and that marimba player aren't going to be able to both play. So my next cymbal entrance is a ways away, so I'm going to give this player that music real quick for now. And okay, so that's taken care of. Let's see if we can get this opening sorted now. Things that the glockenspiel player could play, the tam-tam roll would be fine, the vibraslap would be fine, the triangle would be fine. So I think, oh, real quick, before we do that, we need to make sure that our, okay, so let's put this stuff all over here. Our snare drum needs to have a cymbal by them. So now we're sort of building out our blocking setup here. Cool. So don't forget that. And then our crash cymbals player is going to play glockenspiel also. And okay, cool. Alrighty. Let's see. Triangle and bass drum's probably not going to work that. That, you know, we generally hold and play. In a pinch, if we have to leave it on the stand and play, that's fine. If there's a lot of dampening, we have to make sure that both hands are free. I'm going to put this for now, at least on a triangle note head. And I think I put my crash cymbals here. So I'm just going to, for now, put it here. Okay, cool. So now we've got some triangle. And we've got some glockenspiel. And we've got our crash cymbals there. Okay, cool. So triangle, I suspect we're going to need 2 of those. Okay, cool. There we go. And then what's left is our vibraslap. You can also mount a vibraslap if you need to, but it's more of a pain than it's really worth.
Yeah.
Let's do, that's fine. We'll do a little block. No, let's just do an X. I'll put it here. Okay, cool. Vibraslap. And that's player what, 4? Okay, and that's this person. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, now we've got kind of a sense, Timpani, you go over there, of our different player 1. So player 3. And I know this is maybe not the most exciting thing to watch at the moment. If anybody knows any good jokes, we can tell them. Just try to keep all our stuff in order, because otherwise we're going to get overwhelmed and confused later. And was it player 3 had bass drum? Okay.
It's great that you're sort of thinking about this visual or the layout aspect at the same time. It's something that it never even crosses my mind, to be honest. I suppose this is assuming a certain shape of state, a certain area of stage available to your...
Yeah, and we might, after once we get everything distributed, we might tweak exactly where things are. It's possible that a couple people will share this clock and that we don't need to get a second one, so we might make this player centrally located. And it depends on how much time they need to get around. But yeah, it's always going to be a work in progress until it's not. I think I'm okay with this. We can use the same mallets on bass drum as tam-tam. So I'm going to put the tam-tam down below here. I'm going to put it as an X, so I can visually see at a glance. I might change it long term, but for now. Okay, cool. And then that's there. So now we have our opening figured out. And already there's a problem here. Our triangle, we either need another triangle, or we need to swap maybe the glockenspiel part here. Let's see what else the glockenspiel gets up to, because I think that that's a good thing to sort out now. Notice that our snare drummer, yeah, there's time there. Let's see, where else we have glockenspiel. Okay, player 1. Oh yeah, this glockenspiel is the part that's going to be the pain. Okay, good. So I think I'm going to go ahead and revise this already. I'm going to put this glockenspiel for player 1 here. I'll go back and deal with clefs and stuff later. That's not really important right now. Okay, so we got glockenspiel. We can keep our triangle here. Oops, sorry, I shouldn't have done that. I should do that. Cool. All right, and now we're in pretty good shape for this opening. I think we've gotten everything from the opening. And we've also, most importantly, we've set up our sort of, this is what we're doing and how we're using things until we find out otherwise. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to focus on tam-tam and bass drum right now. So let's see what we got here tam-tam wise. Okay, there's that. Yeah, so whoever gave that suggestion of having your same player on the tam-tam and the bass drum, I think, they obviously looked through the part, because I think it generally does work. That opening roll is the one that I would be most concerned about, and in a pinch, we can use the same mallets on both. Now,
yeah,
go ahead.
I think that's the most, that's the least time in the part to change between.
Yeah, and they can just be right next to each other, and you're good to go. So now we've gotten our tam-tam taken care of, and tam-tam can just go down there to the bottom. And I'm going to go and put the scratch thing here to just sort of show this is all we've got left now to distribute. So as we can check things off, I think it makes it a lot easier to parse, because now we don't have to deal with 10 states. We only have 4. And I think it makes life so much less stressful.
So just to jump in here really quickly, Jamie, sorry to interrupt, but there's a question in the comments of, whether or not, is like, are you suggesting that this approach of actually assigning parts to players 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on should be like the standard for the composer, or are you or is this just a way that you would organize it for your players as a percussion section leader?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of advantages to doing this. First off, you will be able to. You're not just assuming and hoping that it works. You know how many players you need to do this, and you can speak with authority and confidence on that, and that's, I think, helpful. But there's also thinking as a conductor, 10 staves there, each with one line, makes it so much harder to at a glance, what is that? Who's playing that? Whatever. But here, I actually see specific people. I know who's playing which thing. I can say, okay, Sarah's on crash cymbals here, and Tommy's on bass drum. And you start to get used to player 3 is that person, that stuff, and it gives you a map immediately to it.
I see what you're saying, but what I'm questioning is, since you're the person who's most qualified to make that decision and decide who does what and is where, are you suggesting that the composer take that role of assigning the specific instrument to the player, or are you just doing this as an example of how you would reorganize their materials? Right.
I think
so the difference being, whether or not the composer should be doing this job, or whether they should just be writing out single lines for for untuned percussion and just, saying, okay, we'll just have the principal percussionist work all this stuff out later for them, in a more efficient way.
I think it's kind of like bowings with string parts in a way, where, if you meticulously over-notate all of the bows, your string players are going to change it no matter what. If you're reading a recording session, that's one thing versus a concert, right?
Right.
But writing those bowings, but you also, if you write no bowings at all and you don't have any consideration of the bowings, it's going to be, the concert master will go through and make bowings, but they're not necessarily going to be happy about it if you haven't actually thought about the bowings. So I think that if I'm being honest, I think that composers should do this, and you have a percussion score that's all the instruments on their own, and you also have parts that are distributed, and you can say, here's a suggested distribution of the parts and players that I think works, and here's also just en natural everything that you've got, and you can kind of decide how you want to do it, and then you're also, again, making sure that you know that it works.
Yeah, so I'm sorry to be really
please
anal about this, but so would this be something that would be separate from the full score, right? So in other words, would the full score just be separate instruments and whatever, and then you're saying, well, but for the percussion score, we would have parts distributed, according to player and so on and so forth, and that would be something that you would want the composer to consider doing? Or are you saying the full score that that is going to be the final score that the conductor is going to reach should have all of this worked out?
As a conductor, I'd rather see it all worked out. I don't want to see 15 staves when I could have 4.
Okay.
If as a player, I would much rather play off of a part that works. And if we have to hire someone and duplicate a part, we'll do that sometimes. It's like, hey, I'm actually not going to put the chimes there. You're going to play it, and you have a copy of the part. But I'd rather play from that than a percussion score. Carmina Burana was such a pain because it's like you're turning pages, and it's so easy to miss. Where am I supposed to play? Where's this thing? What was that? Oh, I have to go back to the beginning. And when it's all consistent, you're saving the players time. So I would say I think you should do this personally. I understand that not every project has the timeline to allow for that, and sometimes you just have to say, here's all the instruments, good luck.
Sure.
Is that
but
kind of get to an answer?
But with the big but I would say here is, if you're out there and you're listening to Jamie's advice and everything like that, I would say if you have zero experience with percussion scoring, you kind of don't know your way around, you're still learning a lot about it, I would actually differ from what Jamie is saying and say, look, just have separate staves and let the percussionist work it out until you are better at it, because you could end up writing them into a corner, right? Unless you know more about it, right? You might end up with a situation where your percussionist will come back to you and say, hey, listen, you got to redo this, right? So I would say I agree with Jamie with with the reservation that what Jamie knows, right? Is that acceptable?
Yeah, I think that's fine. And the thing
Okay.
is, that makes this all so confusing is that there are so many different approaches. Like the percussion, it's so mercurial in as far as what the standards and traditions are. But actually, this is a good time to jump over real quick before we continue distributing all those parts, because there's some fun things coming up that are going to be a challenge. Let's talk about timpani and timpani tunings. This is a similar kind of thing where should you write timpani tunings in? And I'm going to say yes and no. The player, unless it's a scholastic piece and it's for an educational purpose and the students need that, give them the tuning, sure. But I don't want to see tunings written in my part. I want to write them in myself. But you should also write them in and then hide them. So just looking at this as a timpanist from the beginning here, I'm going to look at this first page and I'm going to say, okay, I've got a D, a C, and an A all kind of in succession here. So I'm going to go ahead and just on my own, I'm going to make sure that I have D, C. So I don't know what's going to be here, but for now I'm just going to do that. I'm going to say I have something in my low drum and then I have A, C, and D. That gets me through that passage. And then, yeah, cool. For now, that's what I'm doing. And then what we have a B natural, we have an A, and we have a G. So, technically you could do this all on the 3 lowest drums. You could do that. I probably wouldn't. I would probably play it B and then A, but I don't have to play this right now, and you don't have to write this as if I'm playing it. So we're going to have a G, we're going to have an A, we're going to have an A, and we're going to have a D. And the reason for that is that this drum right here, our 29-inch drum can roll on that A just fine, but it can't gliss up to a D unless you have that drum cranked really high. Your 26-inch drum isn't going to really be able to get an A, but we're going to just go basically as low as possible, and that's with a gliss. So I'm going to probably hit the A on the 29 and then roll up with the 26. So we get the gliss, but there's also still that initial pitch starting. And then my 29 or 26-inch drum is going to go to B natural. So now I have 26, 29, 32. If you're not familiar with the timpani ranges and sizes, they are 32. I mean, they're different from drum to drum, but the sort of standard right for these is these 4 drums. And that's going to be your first drum, your second drum. I'm totally just butchering all of your music here, but these are the ranges of the 4 drums: 32, 29, 26, and 23. Generally speaking, you can go a little lower. Some of them you can go a little higher if you've tuned it. If I have a C sharp on this drum, I'm probably not going to be able to get an F reliably, but these are the general ranges. So I'm going to go through here and I'm saying, okay, my 26 is on B, 29, 32, we're good. I'm going to go ahead and look now and say, I still need a G here. So I'm going to try to keep that G there. Okay, cool. We have some time here to tune changes. We need an E and a D and then a C sharp. So I'm going to have this. I'm going to have an E. I'm going to have a D before that. That's also going to go to C sharp. Still got my G, and I'm going to go ahead and say an A flat now. Okay, that gets us here. I have a D right there, and it needs to go to a C sharp. So that's my 26-inch again, and it's going to go to C sharp. Life is good. After this G, we have a G flat. So I'm going to say 32 goes to G flat. Okay, cool. So now I have G flat, A flat, C sharp, and E. And here we have a pretty big tuning change. We're going to have a G flat at the top. We're going to have an E flat right below that. We're going to have a C right below that. And below, maybe we want an A. Yeah, this will all be good on an A. So on 32, that's fine. So I'm going to, in this time, kind of get A, C, E flat, G flat. After this E flat, we need a D flat. So my 26, once again, is going to go down. Now, you may notice we've had some tunings like to multiple drums, but in the thick of it, when you're going from, hey, I play this thing and then I play that thing, there's a lot of it's this 26-inch drum is being retuned. That's nice because that means I can kind of keep my focus in one area. I have pitches I don't have to babysit. I can just leave them there. And then one drum that I have to retune. That's more preferable to me than trying to set up my pitches for each like phrase and then change multiple pitches for the next phrase and multiple. I'd rather set as many as I can so that I can only have to deal with a few. So now at this point, what are we going to need? Well, we have that A we talked about. We have an E somewhere in here. Okay, what else? We have A, C, or A and E. There's this F, and we have A flat, B flat, A flat, B flat, F, A flat, B flat, okay, D. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and say, and then we'll get our B flat here. So we have A, B flat, E on the 26, and F on the 23. And then that gets us through a lot of things. Now we need our, let's just go ahead and do A flat right here. We have A flat, B flat. A flat, B flat gets us through a lot of these things. Then we have A, B, and D. So let's do that here. A, B, D. We don't need to do anything with the top drum. And probably right here, I'm just going to have my 32 go down to an F. Okay, so now at this point, we've gotten a timpani part that the tunings work, and this is what the player would do. Obviously, as Thomas would say, I have the experience of a timpanist, so I'm looking at it from a timpanist's eyes. You may not be as comfortable doing that, but also notice how much I looked at big chunks and said, what's happening in this whole area? Can we set things and then only have to deal with 1 or 2 drums along the way?
And these are your notes as a timpanist. This isn't something you're suggesting a composer writes into their part.
I'm suggesting that you do this. You write it in,
then
you hide it.
And then you hide it. Okay, all right.
So then,
yes. So just to kind of scroll back to really early advice that I've given since starting the channel and the group and so on, and this kind of is going along with what Jamie is saying, and that is to work out the changes, right? Just to make sure that they're feasible. Even from a very limited experience as a composer who's just starting to learn about timpani, just what makes sense. But not to presume that that it's something that you have to put in the part, or that the timpanist will be mad at you if you don't include it. They usually prefer you don't. Just sort of like harpists prefer not to have tuning written in their parts either, right? Because they, Jamie and 3 other percussionists might have 3 other solutions to a particular bar, right? So anyways, that's all I wanted to say.
That's great. And what's good about once you have it is that, let's say that this is premiered and performed, and then let's say that a youth orchestra is like, we're going to program it and play it. Our timpanist isn't very experienced. You're like, hey, I have a part that has tuning changes they can use, and even if they change some of it, there is a basis for it that they can jump off from. And then you also know that this part works, and that you don't have to stress and be like, oh, is the timpanist, how they're going to feel about this? Does this work? It works because you've gone through and you find this is going to be okay. A couple other little things about notation real quick. 3 slashes, please, means an unmetered roll. So please don't use slash notation for shorthand, and we're going to talk about that in your marimba part here in a second. Just because, a couple of reasons. One, we sustain with tremolo with 3 slashes. That tells us to try to make a sustained sound. So if you want it to be rhythmic, that's different from a sustained sound. That's something that's got attacks that we're trying to make articulate. And so if you want something to be a rhythm, we'd like to see the rhythm. If you want something to be sustained, we'd like to see that it should be sustained. So I recommend 3 slashes across the board. Don't use 2 slashes. Don't use 4 slashes. And people will say, what about really slow tempo? I don't care. We're not doing math. We're just like 3 slashes. If we see multiple slashes, we generally think an unmeasured roll. And we just think that the composer didn't know what they were doing because they wrote 4 slashes and then they wrote 3 slashes, and we're like, I think you just hit the wrong button on Sibelius. I don't think you actually want something different. The other thing is that because if something's supposed to be metered and metric, I mean, we have right hand, we have left hand. And so we're alternating or doing maybe sometimes a different sticking to get to another part of the instrument, and we write those in. And so if we have all of the pulsations we're supposed to play, we can write the sticking in under the note. If we don't, then we just write like a little RL at the end, and then we might be, wait, what is that? So it's not associated with a note. It's just associated with some slashes. The last thing on here, and I hope you don't feel, Daniel, that I'm tearing this apart, because this is all, I think the timpani part works. I mean, we went through it and there was nothing that I was like, ooh, you know, it all
carry on. This is all great stuff.
works
And
great.
I actually have not seen the timpani part laid out as a individual part before, and I was looking through it and thinking, how did I get to all those key areas? I'm not quite sure, but I'm glad it works anyway.
It works, yeah. And there's a sliding thing here between like this works out the gate, and then like we can make it work, and maybe there's a little bit of a gliss or something that's in a not ideal spot on a drum, and then there's like it doesn't work. So even if you're just in that second zone, that's fine. Like where it's like, we can John Williams. It's written for multiple 32-inch drums. I always have to play it on one 32-inch drum. So I'm going, you know, F, G, A flat, G, or something like that, all on one drum,
right.
Which isn't ideal, but it is fun.
Yeah.
So one last thing on here is just, and we talked about this a little bit before the stream started, but if you want this, if I saw this, I would roll space and then give it a nice strong attack on the end. And if I saw it tied, I would roll release. And there would be a last note, but it wouldn't be separate from the roll. It would just be the end of the roll. And so you may want, do you want these to be separated, or do you want them to be?
No, I think those are all one gesture as well. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so you can tie over bar lines like Tchaikovsky doesn't necessarily, or maybe Beethoven, but just you can tie it. We're good. This looks good. Let's go back to the percussion score here, though.
That's great.
Or I'll just stay in timpani land.
So, hey, before we get on to your last topic, which was going to be general notation issues, I'm wondering if we can just sort of, just go back a little bit, talking about, like you've worked out assigning, percussionists to instruments and so on. And, I wonder if you could talk about two things. One is the practicality of having percussion stations, right? And how they might be situations where there are like several pieces in a concert, but there is really going to not be any time to move the instruments, right? Okay, so that's number one. Number two is the practicalities of changing from instrument to instrument, putting down the mallet, picking up different beaters, having to move a little bit on the stage, having to just like change your state of mind. If you're going from playing like tattoos on a snare to going to playing some icing on a glockenspiel and then turning around and chiming on the tubular bells. Anyhow.
Yeah, let's start with that second one, because if you think about the physical experience of what it is to play these instruments, I think it helps with determining how to pair things up or what things aren't going to work well together. So it's generally speaking a lot easier to go from a lighter instrument to a heavier one. So I would much rather play some glockenspiel and then some crash cymbals than play crash cymbals and then glockenspiel, because I'm going to be using my full body, my full core for crash cymbals, and then something small and delicate and light with the glock while you're just like, whoa, your arms are dead. And actually, just if I can just tell a brief very little story here from an audition that I took once. I played, and there were 2 snare drum excerpts listed, and I played the 2 Star Wars excerpts and then moved on and completely forgot Capriccio Espagnol. Capriccio Espagnol is this like a minute and 20 seconds of this like loud roll on a snare drum, and then real soft, and you have to play this really fast to get it up. It's like big muscle, small muscle. It's exhausting. The last thing on that audition round was Tchaik 4 cymbal excerpt, which is loud, and it's just you can do it like once a day, and then you have to just like go ice your shoulders. And so I get through and I play Tchaik, and I'm like, cool, done. And then they were like, can we hear Capriccio, please? And I was like, this is the nightmare that we always plan for, of like, do runs where you have to play something that's, I would never want to play those 2 back to back. Do that so you can work out the nerves. And so I was like, here we go. I have nothing in my body, and I'm just going to play a loud snare drum roll, then a really soft snare drum roll. And it went fine, but
did you get the gig?
I made it to the finals, which is, I think, pretty good when you forget to play an excerpt. That's a win, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so like the physical aspect of it. So for instance, crash cymbals are one that it's like we need enough time to like get to the cymbals, pick them up, get the strap totally right around our hands, and then get ready to play. So that's not something you can just go 1, 2, 3, 4 crash cymbals. You need like at least 6 or 7 seconds to get the crash cymbals ready.
Right.
And likewise, if I have to put them down fast. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that was my question. Just let's assume, just like we've got on the screen here, there's a big hit at the end. How long do you actually have to hold them if you want the sustain to carry on naturally, or would you
we do some choreography, you know? So like we'd probably play that crash and then let it kind of blossom.
Yeah.
But it will sustain for a while. Yeah.
Speaking of Carmina Burana, I think that there are a couple of places where he could have easily just scored a pair of dishes rather than suspended cymbal. But I think that he scores for suspended cymbal because he thinks that the percussionist is going to be changing over from something else with a beater. So he's just like saying, okay, you don't have to take the time to go pick up a couple of cymbals and strap them on your hands. You could just go do a roll here, and then you can go over and play that snare drum. Possibly. I think that might possibly be his reasoning, because he's got a couple of pieces where he starts off with a suspended cymbal, but it isn't a roll. It's a crash. And then he's got crashes further on that are actually faster, that would, actually probably be more convenient on a suspended cymbal, but he's having the player play it on a pair. So I'm just thinking that might possibly be part of the rationale. Just from what you're saying, it just sort of reminded me that might be a situation.
Yeah. And, a suspended cymbal, you're going to get a lot of the things you get from a crash cymbal. So if you play it with a stick or some harsh implement, you're going to get a lot of the same things, but it's obviously not going to be exactly the same.
Right.
So there's always a trade-off. And actually, Daniel's going to maybe have to make one here in a second.
Yeah, that's the corner, isn't it? And
yeah. So in looking at this, I think we can get away with our glockenspiel being played here. I think our player one has already played some Glock, right? Glock here. Right, they had some right there. So that's cool. And then our triangle here, because of this marimba part right here, it's going to make that kind of difficult. Your marimba player could have a triangle mounted and play, but they're probably going to need that much time right there. So I don't know, none of this really, you could possibly have a bass drum play and then a triangle roll and then move to a tam-tam roll. I think that's going to be a lot of motion and stuff, and I don't know that's going to be the effect you want. So I don't know. I mean, this might be a spot where either maybe the triangle, maybe you don't want it to just drop out, so maybe you just say the triangle's optional and that goes on that fifth part, where it's there. Or maybe, I mean, if these weren't crash cymbals, if it was like hitting with a stick or something like that, or what you could do. Okay, so let me see if I can find an image here. So you can, this is a pretty.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we can do a bass drum with cymbal attachment. And it could be up here. It could even be like on a cymbal stand that is upside, and the cymbal's upside down. We put a suspended cymbal there. That is something you can do. So maybe in this spot. Okay, so we're going to do something, and it's a little bit less orthodox, but what we're going to do is we would just say, we're just going to do that. And then I'm just going to ruin your music's going to look not
and
good.
Is that contraption something that everyone will have access to?
This specific thing, not necessarily, but like I said, when I usually do this, I don't want to deal with the actual attachment. I'll get a cymbal stand and put a suspended cymbal upside down and then play that. So this is something that's workable. You just want to say, let's see, you probably want to say crash cymbals with attachment or something like that. And that could work. And let's make sure that we put that on our Okay, cool. So our setup, now we know we need that. And I'm just going to put it here. Okay, cool. And that means that I'm going to need at least one crash cymbal as well that I can hold and hit right there. So that then allows us to have this triangle part here. And player 2 needs to have a triangle now, which is fine. Oh, they already have one. Look at that. Yay. Okay. Then this last note here, did you need that, or is it just a...
No. Let's say
Okay.
no. This is really intriguing. That's something I hadn't thought of at all. I'm just wondering if actually even the visual aspect of somebody on the crash cymbals is a little bit of a shame to miss it, and whether I would prefer to maybe just cut the triangle roll.
Okay. Yeah, so that's the
sure
easier solution, because then we would have to share this tam-tam part. Although this might be enough time to get to the tam-tam, maybe that player does. But if you cut the crash cymbals, then, or sorry, the triangle, then you're good. Then we will get rid of this.
Cool. Yeah, I think it can work. I'm just trying to hear it in my head.
Yeah, and you can play with it. Cool. That gets us no triangle here. Okay, cool. And then there's a couple other little things here, like this triangle part can go there. That's fine, no problem. Where else do we see? We have triangle and we have glockenspiel, and we have to get back to the crash cymbals. So that means that this player right here is going to need to put up their instrument probably by maybe here or so. So that means whatever they're playing would drop out. Maybe that would just be the triangle. And actually, is this with stick? This looks like it might be with stick.
Yeah, possibly. I think, yeah, I can kind of hear it with
It doesn't
stick.
matter.
Gently, but
stick or mallet. Yeah. If you have this player play the triangle here, 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 and there, and I'm just sort of, okay, cool. And then I guess this player, who else played glockenspiel? Player 1 did, and I think that's it. So have your glockenspiel part here. This player should have time to get there, so that's fine. I'm just going to put block there for now. Okay, cool. So now there definitely needs to be a glockenspiel where player 4 can access it kind of quickly. So I'm going to put player 1 by player 4, and I'm going to draw a line between the glockenspiel and player 4, and then here we go, something like this. Whatever, dude. Okay, just to kind of indicate that this instrument is shared by those players.
Yeah.
And then player 2 has a triangle, and player 1 needs a triangle as well. That's not a big thing to double up on. Having 2 triangles is kind of okay. Yeah, and now we have all of that covered.
Can I just jump in here once again? And once again, speaking of Carmina Burana and some issues that you were talking about previously. And just observing that, like, there's a big percussion break in the latest piece that I've analyzed, Ego Sumabus, where everybody's going crasher, 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 crasher. And there are you can watch some performances with smaller orchestras, and they cut some instruments because they can't afford to have 6 players on stage. So if they just have 4 percussionists, then they'll cut the ratchet, for instance. And why do they cut the ratchet? Is because nobody can really hear it anyways, right? So if there is a specific instrument, like if you are writing 5, 6, you have an idea for 5 or 6 instruments going on at once, but you have to be practical. Just really ask yourself, what can't be heard here? Like, people are always overestimating the power of a triangle, right? And unless you are just really bashing the heck out of that triangle in a fortissimo passage, almost like like a cook in some sort of cowboy movie, yelling "Come and get it," it's not going to come through, right? So just be aware of like the limitations, and also like in that particular part that I'm talking about, there's so much noise coming from the sort of white noise coming from the snare and the cymbal there, that it just that it doesn't, the ratchet is barely, unless the ratchet is just really one of those huge crank ones on a box, you're not going to hear it. Okay, anyways, I just thought I'd add that.
No, that's good. Yeah, so we're at a point right now where basically everything has been distributed, except there's a bit of triangle here at the end that we got to figure out. So who has a triangle so far? Player 1 does and player 2 does. So this player doesn't need that anymore. So this could be something where, if we need player 3 to have a triangle, that they could share that if they're in this kind of setup. So that could be good, because material-wise here, what you have, I think you could get by with a bass drum with one hand and then a triangle if it's mounted. So I'm going to do this, and you, of course, don't have to, but I would say triangle mounted, and I would probably say here, share with P1, so that they know this is just a shared instrument. You don't have to have a third triangle.
Right.
And that's if you are like, I need the triangle part, you might decide
you think that's a better solution than, say, giving it to player 2?
So the thing with player 2, that when I saw it and I was looking through it, I wasn't sure. Partly it's the roll here. So thinking about, if I gotta have 2 mallets in one hand and also hold a triangle beater as my outside mallet, I can totally do that. If it was like 1 or 2 triangle notes, or even maybe 1 roll, it'd probably be fine. But because it's a rhythmic part, and is this 50 beats per minute?
No, this is back to like 120. In fact, I think these bars are, except for that roll, are a copy of the opening, the first percussion idea. So actually, maybe that just means maybe that means I should cut the roll.
Nope, I got you. What we will do is we'll give player 4 this spin cymbal part, and just make sure that they have another spin cymbal. We only have 1 so far, so it's not like we're being crazy here. And then that frees up your triangle part right there.
Yeah, okay.
But this would work if you want to do the bass drum thing. You could make that happen.
It's great that there's some flexibility here.
Yeah.
I'm just going to jump in here really quickly. There's been some discussion in the comments about whether 5-line parts are better, what do percussionists prefer, 1 versus 5, and so on. And I'm going to leave that up to the percussionists that you work with, and of course with Jamie's advice and so on. But what I will observe is something that unless you are able to really create a map for each one of your staves that intuitively assigns a pitch on, played by one particular instrument for one particular sound, right? The practicalities of it really are that if you are composing something where you need to have an audio check on whether or not it's working, then you really probably will have to, your raw score is probably going to have some kind of individual kind of thing, unless you have mapped percussion kinds of things that sort of like a drum kit or a general percussion. In which case you might want to have invisible staves, and then have and then if you're using Sibelius, for instance, just turn off the notes being played back. Okay, so anyways, it's just a practical thing, not to say whether you should have one or the other, but just to be sure that, like, when you're scoring, don't feel that because of Jamie, recommending this 5-staff approach, which is very practical. Don't assume that you know, that is going to take away your ability to hear your score. All right. So I would just say, you know, maybe scoring it raw and then assigning the parts afterwards might be a good approach if you rely on that playback, and especially if you also are working with like a dance company or a film composer or a film director, and they need some sort of live demo.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's usually what I do. I will write the instruments because I don't want to be bogged down by trying to, how do I make that sound happen in this notation software? I just get it all there, and as I'm writing, you know, what you can get in trouble with is if you don't think about your performing forces and your setup while you're writing. So ideally, as you're working on a piece, like, okay, I've got some stuff in it now, you start building this out so you can reference it. Because the other thing about this is that it might help you find some substitutions where you might say, oh, I really wanted xylophone there, but I'm realizing I can just have the marimba player play that up an octave with hardwood mallets, and it'll be basically the same effect of what I was doing. So it can kind of remind you, and also if sometimes you're like, oh, I have 50 instruments on stage, maybe I need to pare that down a little bit. You know, it kind of helps you see what's happening. But yeah, so mute them, and I drag the mixer volume down because sometimes Sibelius and Mixer, they just do random haunted things, and I don't know why. It'll be playing back as a flute or something. Yeah, so you can absolutely just get the sounds working. I highly recommend that. This is just for the players. And if we're going to go ahead and I'm going to make a part now, and we're going to just kind of compare and contrast here a little bit. Well, actually, first let me get my instruments in a better order here. What we had originally. Let's see. Don't need that, which is nice. I'm going to put the keyboards up here just because I like to party. And then, let's see. Oh, it should be there. Okay, cool. Whatever, this is fine. Okay, cool. Make a new part, and we can just kind of see what is it like from the player's perspective now to see a timpani score, or timpani percussion score. Let's see. Yeah, okay, we can just say, let's say that a little bit. We're gonna hide unused staves. Okay, cool. Oops. So this is with unused staves hidden, which is one thing here. Short. There we go. Okay. All right. So there's that. You could also do it where you just show all the staves the whole time. A lot of time that's what we get from our parts. So let's say that you have that's not going to be good for anybody. So here we go. So this is the percussion score part, and let's say player one, the percussionist says, okay, player one's going to play snare drum here, and then suspended cymbal there. Player three is going to play bass drum. Player four is going to play vibra slap. So just opening it, letter B here. Oh, you know what we got to do? We cannot have these things hidden. Yay, okay. There we go. So now I, as the person playing snare drum, am going to have to say, okay, cool, I've got to have these two pages out. I'm playing this, I'd circle that. Player three is going to be playing that. It can just start to become, I think, really cumbersome as a player. When things are real intricate and you have multiple instruments happening in rapid succession. If you can compare that with each player's individual part, let's just do a little note spacing. So it's a lot easier at a glance to see what's working here and what's not, and what's coming up, and when do you have time to kind of go get a lunch break. I don't know, something like that. Okay, cool. So yeah, this player it's real easy to see what they have coming up, and if I put all the call outs in the box, you'd be able to see, like they say, start a letter in, and you're like, what do I play? Well, I know that the cymbal is going to be at that spot on the staff with that note head. I already know what I'm playing. Problem solved. Whereas if someone conductor is like, start at letter N, and you're like, okay, let me flip through my thousands of pages to find it, and then, okay, right, oh, am I playing suspended cymbal there? Yes, I am. Okay, cool. And then that amount of time could be we've already moved into it, and you're already getting yelled at.
Would there be a potential halfway house where you're creating a percussion score with your 4 already combined percussion parts, but all together, and provide that as additionally to the 4 parts?
So you mean sort of like a different another percussion score that's
another percussion score
reduced, sort of.
Yeah, exactly.
Like this.
Like that, yeah.
Yeah, that's also an option as well. I know
what I tend to do without sort of having thought it through. I tend to give individual parts plus this, where it's all been worked out, but they've got the other 4 parts there as well, the other 3 parts.
Yeah, I will say if you can give individual parts, I think that's helpful. I think for a percussionist, principal percussionist, being able to see either this or this score is very helpful because they can see all the instruments that are needed, where you might move some things around. Yeah. But for the actual players, I think this, if you can get to this is really helpful. And if you can't get to this, then maybe you need more players than you thought, or you need to pare down some things and you overwrote, or you need to have an optional part, like, the triangle part for that one spot we just took out.
Yeah.
Just to jump in, I worked a lot with orchestras in the Commonwealth, as you might guess from me living in New Zealand, especially Australia, New Zealand, and so on. And often I'm asked for a percussion score with all the instruments in it, and with a cue staff for any specific changes, and I'm asked for stand parts in addition with cues. So like, so I think my suspicion is, because I've also done the option of assigning specific percussionists, and have been very gratified to see that they followed my directions. But this was a case of where my piece was pretty much the whole concert. It was like 37 minutes long plus additional bits and pieces for a family concert. So they were able to accommodate what I needed. And then I've had other situations where I scored out the entire concert, but it was individual pieces with different percussion demands. So, so in those cases, working out, first, second, third percussionist worked out brilliantly. But then just in I think if I'm contributing a 5-minute piece to a program, where who knows what the stage is going to be set up like, that's when I get asked, give me a percussion score, give me stand parts. Right. Because they might just say, okay, this is real basic. We already have the cymbals next to the snare drum anyway, and then we've got the glockenspiel next to the vibraphone and the tubular bells. All right, we know what to do, right? So anyway, so that's just a perspective from me way down here, falling off the edge of the earth.
Yeah, this is a percussion designation that Patrick did for actually something we're doing next week, some fun at Comic-Con. So it's all like comic books, superhero movies, video games, sort of that aspect of culture. And that's one of those things like Thomas is saying, where you have one piece among 15 or something, and you can already see here there's things where we have actual parts, percussion 1, 2, and 3, and then at this spot you're gonna play crash cymbals for this one in this part. Connor's going to play percussion 2, the suspended cymbal and triangle parts, and in percussion 3, the vibe parts just from these certain measures. So even though there are distributed parts already, the principal percussionist might change things around to make it work better with the overall setup, or just with the players that they have and their comfort levels or interests or something like that. I had 1 or 2 additional little things, and I know we went to some Q&A, so I think maybe like 1 or 2 minutes or maybe 5 minutes of me just sort of putting out my manifesto here. Just some things that I think are helpful. One is articulation. So with articulation, where's my articulation section at here? What are we looking at? Sorry if this is making anybody dizzy. Apologies. There we go. Cool. So this is something that happens like in our engraving groups, and I think older school folks might have a certain opinion, and percussionists might have an opinion, non-percussionists might have an opinion. I think you should write articulation in percussion parts, and in many cases, it may not necessarily impact the duration, but it does impact the style. And keep in mind, we are musicians. We play things musically. We phrase things. So if you have this little ba-da-da-da-da here, just very simple 5 notes, first part of a scale, and it's unmarked, it's slurred, it's staccato, and it's slur 2, staccato. If you read through that in your head, or if you sang it out loud, it's gonna be different because you're giving us style information, instrument agnostic style information. And we want that too in percussion land. And we may not all 100% agree on exactly what this mark means or that mark means, but generally speaking, if you give us a staccato, it's going to be a drier, maybe brighter sound. We might give a little bit of emphasis to it depending on the style. When we slur, we might emphasize the first note, or we might emphasize the last, or we might leak through it or something. We might connect those notes a little bit more, but it means that these are one thing and this is something different in a way. You can use tenutos to indicate weight, or also as a halfway point between unmarked and accented. So we want something to pop as an accent. Maybe we don't want it to pop as much and be as sharp, but we still want it to kind of have some weight and some emphasis. Then a tenuto is very good for that. What else? Yeah, so yeah, for articulation, that's enough of that. Duration is another spot that's kind of odd, and we can look through your score and talk about it, but generally speaking, I think your stuff's clear, and we'd be able to pick up what should we do. If you think of instruments as either being limited decay, which means we're not going to really be able to do too much with it, like xylophone, yeah, you can play a note and dampen it, but what's the point? It's here and gone already. But the glockenspiel, you play a note, it will ring. It's got usable decay, and you have to account for that in some way. And then there's things in the middle that, like, there is some decay you could use maybe, but generally speaking, we don't deal with it. Like marimba, we don't deal with how long does this ring or mute it, because it's not really a big deal. But there might be times when it's like play the note and then mute it, because it's one of those just everything shuts off. But put instruments in those 3 categories, then you have an idea of whether you need to really specify things with duration. One thing that we see a lot is, I play a snare drum, it goes pop, it's it, and it's done. Life's good. So sometimes we'll see folks writing like 8th note, 8th rest, 8th note, 8th rest. Well, let's not do that, because that makes this much harder to read, and there's going to be 0 change in the sound because the snare drum is just a bunch of attacks. Here, these outer ones are good. I said generally no here, but I do kind of like this. I think this feels very connected and less like cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. So the player might play it differently stylistically. You can get the outer ones, but don't do this middle one. That's the one that's really just a no, because it's so obscure and hard to read. We're not getting anything out of having that 16th rest there. Just let it, like, put a rest on a downbeat.
It's broken the beaming. That's the main thing, isn't it? It doesn't look like it's in the same
Yeah,
beat.
and it's also more ink on the page, than we need. And imagine a part that's like 15 measures of this, and it's not all the same, and you're just going to be like, wait, is that so easy to second guess yourself.
Yeah. Or
like this, and this is sort of basic engraving things in a way, but it's so easy, I think, for folks to see percussion and think, okay, it's got to be different, and it doesn't necessarily. So you might clarify for your players if you want them to dampen at the rests or not. So looking even just at this timpani part here, if I'm going to take it totally verbatim, I'm going to play this note and then I'm going to dampen on beat 2. Or I guess on hand. If you want, you can have it. You can give it an LV tie, and that's clear. Let it ring.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of, if you're going to do that, also
make it the right
fill the bar.
Yeah.
Or like don't do. I have to do like 10 notes tied to each other to fill the bar, but make it look longer too, because then I can at a glance see that, and we're good. Then I would let this ring forever. I would dampen here because I see a rest. Same thing with like cymbals. You have to watch out with cymbals. Usually what I do is this. I like right here, I would say something like low LV, unless, I don't know, like maybe unless otherwise indicated. I wouldn't say that because that's way too wordy. But it might be a performance note or something like let things ring unless it has staccato on it or something, and then we'll cut it.
Yeah.
But I like dampen at rest because then it's so clear. If you want that to ring, then you do that, and it's got an LB tie. It doesn't, I dampen it.
Yeah. That's definitely something to go through and check everything. I think some of them have been kind of, I've thought about it and I've done what you've said already, but some of them we haven't. So yeah.
And I think mostly you don't have to worry about it too much. Like if you just say just let it ring unless I tell you otherwise, like then you're all right. You put an LV tie on everything unless there's spots that you say that it has to cut off here or be dampened and then then we're good with that. Those are the big things I think that in here. There's some more, granular things, but we don't want to deal with that. The last thing is just tremolo for sustain. Please give us this stacked chords. This is what my hands are going to do: E, B, and F sharp and A, and I'm going to roll, and I'm good. If you write it like this, like you might see on other instruments, we often kind of see this a lot in piano music or any other, for this measure, maybe that's not a big deal, but we, by default, remember, we sustain by rolling and playing a lot of attacks to make it sound consistent. So we oftentimes will be playing figures that move while rolling. So if we have to play this isn't too bad from a player standpoint. This is kind of a big jump and it may not be super smooth getting into that, depends on the tempo, but I can parse it. This right here, if we were to, like we're technically tremolo, yes, we're alternating between these two pitches, so we should write it that way, but this is way worse. Like, what do I do with that? And even this is a little bit, it's like, I have to parse twice as much information basically, as opposed to thinking about it stacked like that. So this is for anyone watching. Your stuff, I think, generally looks pretty good. There's one spot that I did think we might
there is one spot. It's sort of about a third of the way through this thing. And actually, I do want this to be measured. So I'm not sure it applies. Yeah.
And one thing you did that's really... Sorry, go ahead. We had some lag.
So sorry, this is funny. This has come out as... I think that looks wrong, doesn't it? I essentially want the rhythm in that first bar to continue.
And so you did something right there. Is you made that... I mean, it's obvious to me looking at it. I'd be like, oh, okay, that's what we're doing. So I think you did a good thing here by giving us the base of the thing. But I would probably, in this case, I would just be down to see that repeat measure. And then that's actually kind of nice because then
you don't need to think, look at where's the next change, where's the change,
Yeah, and I can just see that's the thing that's coming up next. Let's see. There we go. Cool. And it's D flat, G flat. Okay, cool. And oops.
I think Dorico's Sibelius conversion has done something really funny here, and it's messed up the. Put in some hidden tuplet or something.
I see. Okay, well, you could imagine what it would be.
Yeah.
And then
so another full bar there, and then more repeats. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that would make it easier to see, and I can really kind of think about my next position, and instead of it being all of this ink. But the other, I mean, either way, this would be, I think, better to see than the other thing that we had, just because it's all very clear. I can see what my hands are doing. It's more ink, but this is probably the best way because there's less ink. But yeah, I think, one thing, I haven't got to say anything like super nice about this yet, but I think all these parts are idiomatic for the players. I think that for timpani +4 for the vast majority of the piece, it works. There might be a couple of quick changes, but it's totally doable. I don't think there's anything that the players have to do that's really uncomfortable, where like they have to play crash cymbals and then they have to play xylophone or something like that. Your player 4 is kind of your keyboard workhorse, so they have to learn all the notes, and there are players that prefer to play more of the keyboard parts, and there are players that prefer to play more of the battery parts. So you kind of got room for everyone in there. I think your timpani part's really well written. Obviously, I don't know what the rest of the piece, what it needs there, but you're using it, I think, as a good effect. You're giving us space. Imagine if the timpani was playing the whole time, how heavy it would feel the whole time. And I think that you've done a really good job of using those resources in here and the colors musically. So I get to say that now.
Thanks. That's really nice to hear. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, a couple of things before we go to Q&A. The first is, Daniel, do you have any burning questions for Jamie? Like, you got him here, you got this pro, this expert, and is there anything that he has not addressed yet? Like just some weird thing or some overall thing that would help you?
No, I can't really think of anything. I mean, okay. unless there's anything that you think is redundant or, well, I mean, leading question. The marimba, the bit where I'm changing from xylophone to marimba, do you think it's like on a scale of, okay, this is going to potentially cost extra money to hire an extra instrument, is it worth it for the difference in sound that you get with a xylophone as opposed to a marimba with hard sticks, hard pallets?
I think yes. I mean, I think that if it's physically doable and it's practical or whatever, I think include that xylophone in there. That's not like a weird whack instrument, that it's expected that they'll have a xylophone, a marimba, a vibraphone, and a glockenspiel and chimes, and a set of 4 timpani. Like you could assume that any orchestra would have access to those things.
Yeah.
But what you've also done, which I think is great, is that you've sort of given us an option though. You can say, hey, if needed, you can play this on the marimba an octave higher, and the only and then you got that parentheses there. So because you're saying, hey, if it's an octave higher, you can't play that D flat. Yep. So it's all well thought out. You might. You might do that, but I wouldn't even. I think they can figure that out. They can figure out how they're going to do that.
Yeah.
I don't usually love mallet changes. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That's all right. For a little bit more information about the marimba and xylophone differences, check out a tip that I've got on the website about the difference between the waveform or the spectrum. Marimba tone bars are tuned to odd and even numbered partials, so that's why they get swallowed up by loud sounds in the orchestra, whereas the xylophone tone bars are tuned to odd numbered partials, so they're more like a clarinet, so they have a much more piercing, harder sound. So anyways, this might be something worth checking out.
Oh, I will. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so just like 3 little things. Something that I've heard from a timpanist is that the more information, the better. That doesn't mean to make the part complex rhythmically when you can get away with simpler rhythms, as Jamie pointed out. But things like phrasing, things like nuance, and all that stuff. A timpanist likes to think that they are like the horn player of the percussion section. At least that was the outlook that I was given by this other timpanist. And they wanted to, if there was some kind of way that they could contribute more musically to the score, they wanted to know it. They didn't want you to hold back, right? They'd rather have a little bit more information than not very much. Another thought about 5-line staves is they are absolutely brilliant for just writing cues on, right? Because you can write you can put a tuba cue on there in cue size notes or piccolo or whatever, and then the player knows where to come in and so on. And also if you've got a big, like multi-movement piece, or a piece that where it's like Mahler, where there's lots and lots of different sections with different tempo changes and things, where you are cueing in the new part, even if there's like a big multi-rest afterwards, just so that the player knows where the hell they are, then that's also really great for that. And then you don't have to have a separate cue staff over your percussion score. Then the last thing I wanted to comment on, Jamie, just tell us a little bit more about your book. Like, when do you plan to release it? Where is it available? If it is available now, are there any previews people can check out? What's your website? Let us know.
Yeah, it's a long project that has been in the works for a while and has kind of rebooted a couple of times to hone in better. Originally, I thought it would be something that was just a quick guide people could just look at for a second and be like, okay, this answers some questions, we're good. And then I started getting into, like, if we want a system that's scalable, like, the problem with percussion notation is that we've essentially spaghetti coded it. We're just like, okay, and now this, and now this, and now this, and now that. Okay, we'll write that like that. And we've just had people solving these things sort of in silos. And so it's not really future-proof. It's not really scalable. So the idea is, if we want something that can be consistent regardless of instruments, and something that can be a system to follow, then I think it has to account for 10,000 other instruments that haven't been invented yet, and it has to allow room for them to be able to put in. Right. And that, of course, made this whole thing balloon to be much longer and bigger, because now you're having to think, like, well, what if a piece, for instance, what if a piece used for marimba used all these different roles you can do? So you're playing a note, okay, cool, but you're also playing just a alternating roll, and then you have some kind of lateral ripple rolls, and then you have it where you give it an attack and a ripple roll, then you have a one-handed independent roll, then the mandolin roll, which isn't super useful, but it's really cool. It's where you put the bar, the mallets on either side of the bar, and you play like that. And then what if you had to do that with the shafts of the mallets instead? And what if you had to, and so forth and so forth. And, like, the idea is, I mean, probably a piece isn't going to do all of those things. Most pieces don't. But when there is a piece that does, how can you handle it? So whenever this thing gets out there, it'll take, I think, I mean, if people want to incorporate this, I think percussionists are going to have to bend a little and say, okay, I'm fine seeing that written that way now. Composers are going to have to bend a fair amount, or just use these things consistently, basically. And the idea too is that the philosophy behind this is that the notation should kind of represent what we're doing physically. So on a snare drum, for instance, you can do all these different kind of sounds. So you have a rim shot, which is where you play with the rim and the head at the same time with a stick. But there's also a rim shot called a stick-on-stick rim shot, where you put the stick on the head and then you hit the stick, and they sound different. They can both be used if you need a rim shot. But the idea then of having the notation, okay, a rim shot's the stick X, and then the stick-on-stick is indicating, hey, you have a note that is just on the head, and then you hit it to make the rim shot. And that diamond that I have right there is also the diamond that you'd use for a stick click. So now the idea of I'm hitting a stick with another stick is a diamond, and I'm doing that on the head, that makes that rim shot, and it at a glance is easily, you don't even have to say anything if it's understood that that's what that is. So I don't know when it's necessarily coming out. There's a lot with the Percussive Art Society. This sort of started as a committee project, and then I rotated off the committee and kept working on it, and then came back onto the committee. And so now we've got a sort of, I can't say too much about it, but I can say that we're actively working on providing audio examples of all these different techniques so that composers can hear what these things sound like, but also providing short idiomatic guides for how to write for snare drum. Here's the techniques that are most common, or whatever, and here are the things you might consider when you're writing. Not to say, like, you should do this or shouldn't do that, but to give information. And then the third part of that is the notation, specifically, how does it sound? Like, what should you write, or what could you write? How would it sound? And then how would you notate it? Three-pronged attack to sort of hopefully give a robust and consistent source of truth for percussion notation that percussionists are behind.
that all sounds fantastic. And about the only thing I think you might be missing so far, which I'll try to supplement in my next book, that is the spectrum of overtones, the differences in spectrums of overtones depending on the firmness of the beater that you're using, which I find absolutely fascinating. You can get, you can excite a different part of the available spectrum depending on whether you're hitting with a brass mallet or a plastic mallet on and it's things that we absorb instinctively. And what fascinates me, like the older I get as a tip writer, is these things we take for granted. Why do they work? And then also dispelling some misconceptions about why things work too, right? So I'd love to dive into that deeper. And I've been talking to different percussionists and recording different things, soft or firm mallets, and just really analyzing where's the strength of that overtone. So anyways,
that's great.
So
oh no.
Oh, Thomas cut out.
Let me stop screen sharing. Maybe that. So you still hear me?
I can still hear you. Well, while he's offline, I'll just say again, thank you so much for all your help here. It's been absolutely fascinating and wonderful, and I'm really looking forward to when your book's out. I'm definitely going to get myself a copy.
I'll send you some advanced reader versions. You can give me your thoughts.
I will do. Yeah.
And thank you for being willing to. I mean, it's vulnerable to have to be like, hey, everybody, come look at my score be picked through, and who knows what's going to happen. It takes a lot of nerve.
Well, you've been very gentle with me. Thank you.
Well, it's good. No, it's good. Like I said, it's. I think it's well written. I think it'd be fun to play, and I think it's clear. So looking through it, when I first got the file, I looked through it and I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna work great. Like, this is not. I didn't get it and I was like, oh god, okay. I didn't plan any of this. The first time I went through this was when I did it on here, because I looked glancing that I was like, this works. You can just.
It's really interesting to see your decision making process, and that sort of first thing that you're like, okay, that clarity of thought of, okay, you can play this and this together, so that those have to go, and then therefore these two have to go, and it all fitted in. When I was looking through it myself, it was much more kind of, oh, maybe it could be this, and then that wouldn't work, and then I sort of was shuffling things around for ages before I even got to something that was vaguely working. But yeah.
Yeah, and one thing we didn't talk about was substitutions. Although you already approached that with your marimba and xylophone, there are cases where you could substitute things, but I don't think you needed any in here. We talked about that a little bit with the crash cymbals. It could be either a stick on a suspended cymbal or a attachment, and then
Yeah, it is something that I wondered about. I was thinking whether that's the sort of necessary sacrifice to try and get it down to 3 players at one point, and then I thought
3.
Then I thought, what, I'm not going to try and do 3. I then expanded it to 4. I allowed myself to expand to 4, and I think it's necessary.
I'm trying to see if there's a possible way forward, maybe.
There were definitely sections I wrote after I sort of decided, okay, I'm not even going to try 3. I'm going to allow myself 4. So I'm sure they wouldn't work. But
I think you could make it work. Where was the spot? The end was the one spot where we were like, oh. But so let's say you mounted the vibra slap.
Yeah.
So that your snare drum, and then.
Right.
Okay.
That's one. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. There's a way. I mean, it might involve some crash cymbals being suspended cymbals or being attachment.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That'd be a fun challenge.
Oh well, maybe you'll get your hands on it to play one day and do it with 3 players. That would be, prove me wrong. That would be amazing.
Be a wild ride.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if Thomas. Let me see. I could try to pop into the YouTube and see if maybe some questions that are there we could.
Hi guys,
hey.
Sorry about that.
Hi,
I had a power outage.
Oh no!
Sorry. Just boom. It's like, hey, now let's.
Yep.
All right. So thank you so much for taking the initiative there, you guys. It sounds like you were starting to organize Q&A.
Yeah, we're starting to start too. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's do it. I will actually. I'm gonna see if I can get my main system going. So I will leave it to you and Daniel, Jamie, and Daniel to field the questions, and then I'll come in and do a little moderating later. All right. Take it
Okay.
away.
I didn't know if did you have any that you gone. I didn't know if let's see if there's any questions that were on here. So I guess
I'm here.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say I didn't know if you had any that were already on there, or if they're just dropping them in now.
I'm going to jump back. There was this one question. I think it's gone too far back past in the feed.
Mm.
And I think you answered a lot of questions about the advantages of a 5-line part and timpani and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I see some questions that have been dropped in here.
There's somebody saying, how does the timpanist change pages so frequently? With their hand.
Yeah. Yeah. No air turn pedals here, because I got too many pedals as it is. Yeah, I mean, it depends, because sometimes I might even get a second stand if I need to. I can usually get 3 pages on. There's usually some moment when I can move a page over or something like that. Unless I have like a long roll, and then usually what I'll do is I'll try to memorize what happens for the page turn and turn the pages and then just start the roll.
Ideally, we just give my job to give it to you without bad page turns, probably, isn't it?
Yeah. Ideally, but most things
we don't
in life aren't ideal in art. Yeah. How many seconds does it take to tune a timpani? It depends. There's some stuff where I'll tune per note, like I go boom, 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 all in one drum when I need to do that. In fact, we just did Festa Romane, the Respighi, this last week, and I only had 1 32-inch drum. So there's this spot that goes like da 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 da, and I just was back and forth on one drum. You wouldn't want to plan on that, but it was fun to do, and it worked out well.
There's a question. Oh, go ahead.
No, you.
I was going to say this might. Let's see. I'm going to show the question.
Perfect. Yeah. So the question on here is, what are your thoughts about notating precise durations for instruments with long reverb? Example: whole note tied to half note instead of marking LV. My general philosophy is fill the bar, and if you want it to ring beyond the bar, give it the LV tie, and let it go on. You could do something early in the score, just sort of saying like always let it ring unless a staccato is used, and then use staccato in the spots when you want the part to dampen or to damp. Yeah, so I think make it look like how it sounds is a kind of guiding light. So if it sounds long, make it look long. Some books really do sort of advocate for just show us the attack, and I think that doesn't quite look how it sounds, and it's possible that it's sort of like confusing because LV ties aren't very huge, right? So if I see a quarter note with an LV tie, I might miss the LV tie and dampen. But if I see a whole note and it's got an LV tie, I have time to kind of like, oh, and that rings, I move on.
I have to say, there is it's become more and more the fashion to have the tiny little LV tie. And I just feel that I've seen some situations, some practical situations where people they just do not have time to have really studied the part, and they are going in there and especially with the film session, mm-hmm. right? And they don't even see it because it especially if it's on a note that is with ledger lines, it might just melt right into the ledger line if you have a really short LV tie. And the other thing too is, just like you were saying, if the got to change headphones. If the you know, if you really are expressing a long tie or a long, you know, a long duration, you know, I think it just looks better to me. But I guess I think there's also the other thing too. It's there are some instruments that have sustain that's like a harp, right? Like glockenspiel and vibraphone if you got the pedal down or whatever. So maybe it doesn't always need, you don't have to put it on every single note if the instrument just has a sustain kind of you know, have a longer sustain in general.
Yeah, I think if you're going to have a lot of sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, just to interject a little bit. I have a conductor who I work with. Sometimes I've done some arrangements for him last year, and one of the feedbacks I got was, oh, this note here, I know you've got the LV tie, but please mark in LV as well, LV, and don't dampen the sound, because this one's a really important one, and they, you know, there's always a chance that with the LV they miss it. So yeah, I think that's a practical consideration that comes in from the former's end as well. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
No, that's great. I think nothing else needs to be said. We can keep moving.
All right,
that was good.
More questions, please. I'm not noticing a lot. I hope people didn't just ditch us past past the 2-hour mark.
I keep going, you know. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So yeah. I'm trying to think. You know, what questions do I have?
I can give an example of a score here real quick. This is Peace American Biomes. It's 10 movements. It's about 60 minutes. You can view it on my YouTube, premiered by University of Arkansas Fort Smith. It's really cool. A really cool group. But you can kind of see an example of, you know, I just say LV sempre. Just always let it ring, and then we don't have to worry about anything else. Maybe I would like to but I also, this is a scrape, right? And so I don't want the player to scrape for 4 beats. And if I do, I would write it as a whole note, right? Like scrape. But I just want, so it's written for the duration that I want that. And it's the same thing with bows, actually, is I'll write the rhythm of the bow. So if I want a slow bow, I'll write a whole note. And if I want just a blossom, then I'll write a quarter note. So that way it's,
that makes sense. That does make a lot of sense. Yeah, and one other thing that I do want to mention, especially to developing composers out there, you know, if you want, you know, your tam roll, you know, the sustain after your tam roll to last for 2 or 3 bars, then just write out that, you know, don't necessarily just say LV and forget about it. You know, if you have a really specific sustain in mind, you should mark it. And I think that's also true for harp. I think a lot of times people do have a pretty precise idea of how long they want the sustain from the harp to last, but they just think, oh, well, just LV or whatever. So you know, write it in. If you really want things to last a while, or if you have a specific idea of the duration, write it in. Don't just rely on LV all the time. All right, so we've got a couple more questions,
awesome.
If you don't mind. Okay, so here's one from Emily.
What does battery mean when referring to orchestral percussion? So think of the term battery, hit, you know, so anything where we're gonna like hit, not a keyboard instrument. So keyboard, if it's pitched, if it's discretely pitched, keyboard instruments, timpani's timpani. If it's drum set, then that's its own category. And then there's like hand percussion, accessory percussion, which kind of does fit within the broader battery scope. So your snare drum, your bass drum, cymbals, tambourine, triangle, your non-pitched percussion instruments, unless they're like a drum set or something, is its own category. But yeah, just all the things you're going to hit that aren't pitched is usually batteries are good.
Right. Non-mallet instruments. I don't know.
Yeah. And of course, with like the union, when we negotiate our contracts for doubling and stuff, then battery might mean certain instruments and not other instruments. But that's more granular than anyone here needs to worry about, you know.
Fair enough. Unless they're negotiating.
Yes.
But here's another question from a different Emily. Okay. we have two awesome Emilys in the community, actually more than that, but these two Emilys are really active and they're awesome and have great questions. So should vibraphone pedaling be notated or left up to the player? And I also have an answer for this, but you go first, Jamie.
Why don't you go first, and then?
Okay. All right. Here's my philosophy. All right. Most people who are getting into composing and stuff are experienced playing the piano, right? So, and they know what the difference is between playing things dry and not, right? And they have to be aware if the pedal is up on a vibraphone, it is a very short sound. Whereas if a vibes player, like a jazz player, is sort of improvising and doing stuff, they will just naturally pedal in following the sort of the thematic flow or the harmonic flow of the piece. So I've worked with players like like scoring out like a vibes version of Take 5 or whatever, and all I had to do was just mark pedal at the beginning and then just let them figure it out. However, when I had a really specific idea for a vibes player to have groups of sustain within the piece, I would score that out. So I think that like most vibes players that I've worked with are smart enough to know when to change the pedal, but and they might not even need the marking to mark pedal because it's an assumed thing, but mark it anyway. That's my philosophy. So mark it anyway. You can leave it up to them to make the changes that they need. However, if you have really specific ideas about the durations of the sustain, then you should write it in. That's my view. And the same thing goes for tubular bells, by the way.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Jamie?
I generally agree with all that. I don't know if my screen sharing, but in my book, my forthcoming book one day, I have a little bit about that, and there's kind of three ways to do it. So the first way here, I don't see it. Is it showing for you guys?
No.
Hang on.
Okay. Sorry, Thomas. I'm a bit of a wild card. You never know where I'm going to go next.
It's all great. I'm going to take away Emily's comment just so we can see you. All right.
So there's a little bit here just demonstrating. A pianist can hold a note over and then repedal and then change. Right. And for a vibraphone, it's going to cut off the sound and then let the next sound ring. So it's a little bit different than piano pedaling. And the only time we really do this stuff is mostly with vibraphone, sometimes chimes, and actually sometimes crotales and Glock, depending on the model. It might have pedals as well, but you can't count on those having pedals.
That is such an important thing that I might actually turn it into an orchestration tip, and that is that you can't half pedal with a percussion instrument, right?
You kind of can't.
Not with the same kind of like you going up there. You're saying, vibraphones must reset pedal before striking the second chord because it's not a question of being able to hold down the keys as the pedal changes, which is what it's just what we do automatically as pianists. So it really has to be, and some vibes players that I've seen can just get it down to just the hair's breadth. I mean, it almost feels like, and there's a natural resonance of the pipes and everything. They're all kind of working together to make it mush together a little bit, but it's not the same thing, right? So if you just really, there's a lot of light jazz that we're playing successions of major seventh, minor seventh chords walking up and down. It's a very old cliche. Don't expect that level of smoothness necessarily, right? From your vibes player that you automatically assume on piano.
Yeah, and we do have like half pedal as a way that we will pedal things where it's kind of depressed, and so there's a little bit more length, but it's not ringing. Right. And it's a hard balance to catch, and usually that's something the player will deal with. As far as notation goes, so there's kind of 3 different ways you can do it. You can notate the pedal markings. This means you have to make a decision about what they should do, and you may not be comfortable making every decision. So as a player, if I see this, I'm not going to pedal right there because you have been very specific to me that you need to pedal. One thing you could do is you could say ped ad lib, except where marked, where it's like, make whatever decisions you think are best, but when I have it marked, please do that for sure. I want these to ring for 2 beats. Don't pedal each beat. Something else you can do is you can have slur markings. Now, the disadvantage of this is that it removes the ability to use slur markings for phrasing, and you're now tying it to a mechanical thing. But it looks nice, and I think is easier to parse at a glance in many ways than the other way was. But these would be performed differently because I would not pedal here, and I might do some pedaling. I want to pedal this just so it is longer. So I might pedal these notes just a little bit different. You can also just leave it up to the player, and what happens. There are some things I as a player would do here that you may or may not like for me to do. But I think those are the 3 ways that it's gone down. You can't go wrong with notating all the spots that you want to be pedaling. I like ped ad lib and then, except where marked.
All right, we've got another question here. All right, hang on a second. Let's show that again. My my computer's running a little slow. Hang on. Okay, there we go.
Have, something to chip in for this one.
Yeah.
Which is once I was formatting a part which switched between some mallet percussion and some unpitched percussion, and I think as a Sibelius default doesn't show the key signature when you switch to the mallet percussion. Of course, in this case, they were immediately playing some chromatic notes that were in the key signature which hadn't come through, and so there was a kind of typo in the part. I think I spotted it and I had to sort of manually correct it, but it's definitely something to watch out for, isn't it? But I don't know whether which is better or worse. But
I think you're absolutely right, because it can sometimes, it's like you switch back to keyboard and it doesn't bring the key signature because it's partway through the line or something, and then you're seeing it all natural without any of the accidentals actually written in because they're in the key signature, but the key signature isn't being displayed. I think if you have a keyboard part, you can use a key signature or not, and it's like any piece of music. You can decide to use a key signature if it's appropriate or not. So if you gave us a part that didn't have a key signature and it's on a keyboard, like, we're fine. We'll be able to figure it out and navigate it. If you want to include a key signature, that's great. If you're switching back and forth, like Daniel was talking about here, with non-pitched and pitched, you probably need to change the actual instrument in Sibelius so it'll go back and forth, but you are going to have to audit and make sure that the key signature shows up. And there's also what I usually do is, like we talked about, having all the instruments so they play back, and then you copy and paste things. So sometimes I'll even just have a melodic instrument for my percussion part if it has keyboard stuff, and then the key signature is showing the whole time, and then I'll try to hide it at certain spots when it's just a non-pitched part. So you can go at it kind of either way: a non-pitched staff with some key signatures, or a pitched staff where you hide the key signature when you're playing non-pitched material.
Alrighty, so we've got another. We've got a comment, sort of. I know it's kind of a question.
All right.
And that is, Christopher asks, I would assume it to be the composer's job to include general score markings and the performer to refine them to taste. And can I jump in there and answer a little bit from my perspective as a composer? I think that if you know what you're doing, if you know what you want from the mallets, like I was mentioning before, that use of different mallets, it doesn't just give you different articulation, it also excites different parts of the spectrum. If you know what you're doing, if you know what you're asking for, then you should write that into the score. That's my feeling, right? Christopher's saying general score markings, performer refine them to taste. I think that there is a lot of that the percussionist does, from my experience, and they will end up making choices that are different from percussionist to percussionist, depending on who is playing my work next. But I've never felt that I had to jump in so much and say, oh, the other guy did it a different way. Could you do it that way? I mean, that rarely ever happens, right? But I think that's because I did all the groundwork and made sure that the choices that I was signifying in the score be something that was useful to the player and good for the music. I don't know. What do you think, Jamie?
I agree. If you can pop my screen share up here real quick, I can show an example of looking at this. There's some specificity and some non.
Hang on, let's try that again.
Oh, cool. So right here, vibraphone motor off because the motor had been on previously. Got to make sure that this movement we start with it off, but nothing about the mallets, right? So the player's going to pick whatever mallets work for them based on this very aggressive music. So they're going to pick some harder mallets because they have to play pretty articulately in a higher register. But also for the percussionist, any two cymbals. I didn't need to specify this needs to be a this or a that. Just hit two cymbals. It's fine. You're going to hit two cymbals. They're going to sound like you're hitting two cymbals. And that also gives the player a little bit of a chance to kind of, add some additional cymbals, and you might even move 3 or 4 cymbals in this section, and that's okay. So the general advice that I try to give is if specify as much as necessary, and then don't worry about it. If the player needs to know to use a certain mallet, sure. Like I'm not going to pick up rubber mallets when I play this vibraphone, but maybe you want rubber mallets, then you need to let me know that for sure. But maybe you just need to hit something. So just let the player know, just hit something here and it's fine. Doesn't matter what it is.
Right. All right. So I think we have time for one more question.
Awesome.
And that is from M. Bishop. I'm reorchestrating a piece that has a harp gliss for an ensemble with no harp. I thought I could simulate this by having the vibraphonist sweep up the black keys, but how would you do this? I mean, sweep up the black keys, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry, Thomas. I'm going to ask for one more screen share here.
Yeah, that's all right, man.
I keep closing it and then
again.
So I think this is a good question. There's some different ways you can do it. I probably, if I just saw a gliss, like from low F to high F, I would probably just go across the natural keys. Well, the problem with glissing across the black keys, it's not that you can't do it, and I'm not saying that it's wrong, but there is, because of this gap, so when I'm pulling the mallet across, it's on the naturals, it's got a continuous sort of surface, and it'll bounce a little bit in the spots in between the bars, and that kind of gives it the energy of the gliss. But here, the mallet's going to go down lower and then hit this a little bit herky-jerky. So it's not going to be a smooth thing. It's going to be like bloop, 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 bloop. If you combine the two and do both, then you can get some of that chromatic-y, glissy stuff with the continuous gliss, and you can kind of cover up that little bump there. You can also try, it doesn't work as well necessarily, but trying something where you have it in between, or you have 2 mallets in one hand, and because the one mallet is going to be on the naturals here, and then the other mallet is here, it's not going to dip down as much because your hand is a little bit more stable because they're resting on the naturals. And
I would imagine that if you're doing a sweep like that, the firmness of the mallet does make a difference in being able to kind of hear it more clearly, right? If you just if you use an extra soft mallet, it just might sound like wind in the or something like that, wind chimes or just a slight susurration of air, rather as opposed to a nice firmer mallet kind of ripping across the surface.
And it depends too if you want. If you want me to gliss from one note to another note, that's notated one way. If you want me to gliss just sort of I start low, I'm going to end up high, but it doesn't matter how many I do, that's going to get more energy and more probably what you're looking for, with a harp gliss. But you might just need to let us know that you want multiple glissandi up, keep the motion going.
Right.
So.
All righty. Well, look, I think we better stop there. You know, despite dealing with some slowdowns in my computer, I just had a big one just now, but it worked itself out, and a power outage. It was a great time for it. Yeah, I've really wanted to hang out with these two people for a long time, and there's so many great, there's so many great musicians, composers, have got interesting projects and stuff happening. I remember, like, there was a burning question in the group a lot, and that was like, how do I get performed? How do I, how do I build a career? And like, the answer to that, the simplest answer is having something of your own, right? And here I am with two people who do have that, right? They've got stuff going on, right? So I would just say that is, like, don't expect anybody to walk up to you and say, I think you're a great composer, you're going to work for me and write symphonies. That never happens, right? But if you build connections and you build up your career and you come up with projects and you find people to work with and so on and so forth, and you've got something that people actually want a piece of, right? And I could lecture on that, but I won't. I will stop now and thank Daniel and Jamie for their amazing contribution to this video. I really appreciate you both. Daniel for starting it and for having like really great interaction here, getting the best out of Jamie with your questions and your piece, and which I found fascinating. I really hope that you have a great, fantastic premiere, and that that you go on to having more than just one performance, right? That's the thing. Yeah. And Jamie, thanks. I mean, I wish you the best with your book, as somebody else is going to try to release a book this year. You've got all my empathies, and very, very much interested to pick up a copy when it happens. And I would be happy to review it for the community once you've got it, and maybe even interview about it once we're closer to the date. All right.
Okay, cool.
So thanks. There was a lot of thanks in the comments too. So I'll end the stream now. And thanks so much. And also thanks, community, for all the interest and really positive feedback. Daniel's got a comment.
Just before we finish, just to say thank you so much both to Jamie for all your amazing feedback and taking the time to do this, and also to Thomas for hosting us and for just running this amazing community, as you always do. And in case anybody's interested to hear the piece that we've been dissecting over the past couple of hours, I'm going to just put a link to it in the comments. I've done a little audio mock-up which goes with the some pictures from the book that I based it on. So if anyone wants to have a look, it's just there in the comments. And thanks again.
Cool.
Sure. All righty. Well, all right. So with that, I'm going to end the stream. Thanks very much. Stick around, Daniel and Jamie, for the after party. All right. See you guys later.
All right.